Hey guys, Erin from Erin Elizabeth Photography here. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for purchasing my outdoor beach post-production and workflow video. I firmly believe that getting it in camera is the best way to go about it. So if you're interested in learning more about how I shoot my beach sessions, be sure to check out my other videos. I've got outdoor beach maternity and also outdoor beach family. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through my entire workflow from start to finish to show you how I would edit a typical client gallery and also demonstrate some of the challenges that I face when I'm editing my beach photos. So let's get started. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take you guys through a typical session here. I don't have the full session because I would like to get to other things today, but I do have 5 images from a session that I'm going to treat as if we're editing 30 images. So the first thing that I do when I start editing is I create a folder for my clients. I'm going to do it by year, then month, then date, and then the name of the client. And then within that folder, I have 6 subfolders. I've got originals, selected, edited, final, black and white, and resized. So I'm just going to talk you through the whole process before we start it. But essentially what I'm going to do is put my originals obviously in this originals folder here. Then I go through this originals folder and I choose all the images that I like the best and I slide them over into this selected folder. What I end up with there is usually in a typical gallery, I'll have something like 50 to 60 images in the selected folder. Then I go into the selected folder and I ruthlessly cull it down until I get only 30 images in there. I don't edit more than 30 images for a client unless I'm feeling particularly generous, which is very rare. So usually 30 images in here. Then I will open those up into Adobe Camera Raw and I'll do my exposure and white balance changes, some adjustment brush changes as well, and I open them up into Photoshop. Once they're in Photoshop, then I do the full edits of the photos. So these are not cropped and not sharpened. Once I do that edit, I save it in this edited folder here. The reason I do that is because, first of all, I like the images saved in 2 places. And second of all, I want an image saved that is uncropped in this edited folder in case a client will come back to me and maybe ask for a different crop or a different aspect ratio, or they want a canvas where I need a little bit of extra room on the edges. Lots of different reasons to have them there. Once I have them in the edited folder, then I open them up again into Photoshop. I'm going to crop them, into Adobe Camera Raw, and this time I'm going to crop them to a 5:7 ratio. It's not a 5:7 size, just the ratio, because that's the ratio that I order reference prints from my clients and also the ratio that I send to my printer and to my client as their final images. So once they're cropped, I open them up into Photoshop again. This time I'm going to sharpen them for print and convert them to black and white. So first I sharpen them for print and I save them in this final folder. Then I convert to black and white, save them in the black and white folder. Then I copy the black and whites over into this final, and I and then I rename all the images, and those are the images that go to my client. Then because I do online galleries, I do open them up one last time in Photoshop. This time I'm going to resize them for web, watermark them for my online galleries, and save them in this resized folder. So I know that was a lot, but we're going to go through it much more slowly now. So I'm going to go into my originals folder, and because I already selected these from different sessions throughout the past year or so, I'm just going to put all of these into my selected folder. So what I'll do is I'm just going to take these and I'm going to slide them over into selected, which leaves me 0 in originals. But normally I have all of the images I don't use in the originals, meaning that, or the raw files, meaning that when I go to send the files to that client, I've ordered the prints and everybody's all happy, I can then delete this originals folder. I do sometimes hang on to the selected folder just in case I want to come back and re-edit the images later for some reason. For example, creating this video. It's come in very handy to have those raw files. But otherwise, all those original raw files get deleted because I don't need to have that much space used up on my computer by files that are unnecessary to keep. So we've got our 5 images from our session. I'm going to open these up into Adobe Camera Raw. And this is where I'm going to do exposure changes to the whole image as well as to part of the image, and the same with white balance. So for beach sessions, I do a lot of work with white balance and the adjustment brush, because when you're shooting a beach session, we'll go to something like this. it's very difficult to get, well, I'll say it's pretty much impossible to get warm looking sand. You can see my sand looks really blue. That is not what color it actually is in real life. And also your nice blue sky and pretty clouds. It's all kind of bluish in this photo. I need to do a lot of changes in order to bring those colors out and make it look like what it actually did look like on the day. Same goes for all of these photos here in this particular session. So if I'm making global changes, it happens on this main part here. I can up my exposure up or down. I don't need to do anything with the exposure in this one. I do tend to underexpose my beach images, you can see here, so that I can keep the detail in the sky and water. So I prefer to make my exposure changes using my adjustment brush normally. One thing I am going to do here though is there's quite a lot of hot spots here on this side, nothing too blown. I can recover most of it. So I'm just going to bring my highlights down in this whole image to bring a bit of that detail back in his shirt and on the side of his face there. So you can see it's bright, which is okay because it's obviously back/side lit there, but I don't want to lose the detail there. Then I'm going to go into my adjustment brush. And that, by the way, this is the only thing I'm going to do in here because I don't want to change the white balance of the entire image. I want to make sure that I'm making the correct white balance for each part of this image. Normally for your beach sessions, you've got 3 parts of the image, so I do 3 major changes to it. My subject and my sand need to be nice and warmed up, usually a little bit brighter as well. The water needs to be a specific color, and then the sky changes depending on the day. So we're going to start here with this little man. He has a little sort of worried look on his face. So I'm going to work on that in Photoshop a little bit, make him look a little happier. But you can see that this needs to be warmed up. His shirt here is quite blue, quite cool. Even the box here has a lot of cool to it, and so does the sand here. So I'm going to pretend these are all at 0, and then I'm going to add a bunch of warmth and add some magenta and maybe bring up the exposure just slightly. Now, it's not super important what numbers you pick here because you can change that. So I just choose some random numbers, and it might be way too warm, not warm enough, and I can figure that out later once I've painted it on. So I made a huge soft brush. I'm going to paint that on him. There we go. It's taking a second to come in there. And I can see it's a little bit on the warm side. It looks okay on his shirt, but you can see in some of the shadows there, it's kind of got a little bit too much warmth. So we're just going to reduce that slightly until I'm looking at his shirt more than anything because I want that to be white. I actually prefer clients don't wear white to sessions because of this, but they do all the time. So you need to know how to deal with it. Now, he's got maybe a little bit of orange happening here that I want to sort of reduce that a little bit. So I'm going to go back to my main part here and go to this little tab here called HSL Grayscale. And, oh, sorry, I've already taken it out in this image. Sorry, I've erased everything but forgot that. So he's got even more orange now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the orange slider here on the saturation tab and bring that down until he looks a little bit less orange, which is about right there. So what that's doing is removing the orange from the entire photo. I don't like what it does to the sand usually because I like a little bit of the orange in the sand, but actually it's not bad in this image at all. And it keeps it that nice white sand color, which is what we want, and also a little bit of a magenta tone, which I'd much prefer a magenta tone to the sand than I would green. I hate green in any of my images. So now I'm going to come back here to this adjustment brush. And you can see I've clicked off of it, but if I hover over it, it's going to show me where I've painted that on, which is actually a lot of the image. So I can click back onto that and then come to the erase button here. And I can just erase it off the top of this photo. It's very light on the top, but there is a little bit of it there. It brings a little bit of that coolness and blue back into the water there. But I want to add more, so I'm going to do another adjustment brush by clicking this new button here. We're going to put these back to 0 by double clicking on them. And then I'm going to add some blue and a little bit of green as well to this background. It's probably too much there, but again, we're going to paint it on and then we're going to test it afterwards. So paint this on. The big soft brush. Taking its time actually painting on, I think, because I'm recording the screen gets a little overwhelmed. Okay, that actually looks not too bad. It's maybe a little bit on the magenta side, so I'm just going to add a little more green to bring that there. And yeah, that looks pretty good. And then paint a little lower here as well. Okay, all right. Now, last but not least, I'm going to go back to this one, and I'm just going to add a tiny bit more exposure here, just to bring him up a little bit more. And then we'll bring the highlights down again so that we don't bring those with us. Okay, good. All right, now, because I'm doing this session on the same, all these images from the same session, I can sometimes reuse my adjustment brushes, which is the beauty of editing the images all at once. So that's why I usually edit my galleries all at once, because I can save myself a lot of time. In saying that, this lighting and this lighting is slightly different because it was just a couple of minutes later, and the sun tends to change very quickly here on western facing oceans. So, and also we had a little bit of cloud cover, so it's kind of coming in and out of the clouds there. So I'm going to attempt to use the same brush that I just did on him, but I might need to make changes. So we're going to paint that on my subjects here. Again, you need to use a really big brush for this so that it's a gradual change behind them. And actually that looks pretty good. I don't think I'm going to need to do much to them. Their skin tone still looks nice. I could maybe add a little bit more warmth to this sand, and maybe a tiny bit more to them. So we'll just bring that warmth up just a little bit. But again, I'm looking at his white shirt and it looks pretty white to me, so I'm happy with that. Okay, because I already have this brush, rather than trying to mess with the sky and the water and everything in this one image, I'm going to save time by going and doing it to all of the images. So this is what I do in my sessions. I figure out the beach or the sand and the subjects, and then I go paint, 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 paint on every single image down the line. Then I do the water, paint, 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 then the sky exactly down like that, and it really increases my productivity, meaning I can get through this session a lot quicker, thereby making more money. So we're painting this on, and it's taking a really long time to actually paint on, but don't worry, it'll show up here in a second. This one is a little bit trickier because unfortunately I was not tall enough to get his head below this horizon. I like their heads to be below the horizon if at all possible. This one's a little bit too bright, so we're just gonna bring that. I don't think I need to add any exposure to that. Maybe a tiny bit. No, we're not going to add any. Okay, sorry. So he's a little bit above this, so it just means I have to be really careful when painting on the water. Ideally, I want to put myself in a little bit higher. People ask me all the time, are you standing on a ladder at the beach? No, I'm not standing on a ladder. I just am really careful about making sure I work with the incline of the natural incline of the beach down into the surf, so that I'm standing as high as possible so that I can get them below that horizon line if at all possible. I think it was here because I was closer to them that I needed to be a little bit lower. So anyway, moving on, then we're going to paint here. Again, this one was quite cool, so I feel like I'm going to need to add a little bit of, and I'm going to have this go onto the waves a little bit because the waves looked a little bit cool as well. Okay, painting all that on, making sure it's all on there. Good, and I'm going to add a little bit more warmth. You can see them start to warm up there. Maybe a tiny bit of brightness there. And other than that, that looks pretty good. Now, obviously my water is way too warm back here, but the waves, which is what I was worried about, the surf there, I want that to be as close to white as possible. So I'm going to leave it on that part, just like it is. Okay, and last but not least, this one is one where I can increase the exposure of the whole image. It's a little bit dark, so we're just going to do that now. Bring that up slightly. There we go, and then I'll come and paint the same brush on one more time. Because again, as I'm progressing down the line of my images, the light's changing a little bit, but it's very small changes, so each time I might need to add a little bit more warmth or a little bit more magenta just to make it work. Okay, nice warm subjects and good skin color. Now, I want to go and let's do the sky let's do the sky next. So I'm going to do a new adjustment brush. So we're going to, I'm going to do a new adjustment brush. So I'm just going to make that one much more watercolored blue. We're going to take the brightness out and add a little bit of green as well. So I'm going to be really careful to do this just on the water line. Just like this. And again, this one I want to use a smaller brush because I don't want to get it onto those waves if at all possible. Then I take my erase with a little bit bigger brush just to blend it in a little bit. And I'm going to blend in here up in the sky as well. And I can come back and make changes to this adjustment brush later as well. So if you're worried about making a change and then you're like, am I going to like that later? Or when I paint on the sky, if some of the blue of the sky gets on this and then it looks too blue, I can always change it. So let's do the water on all of these now. So we're going to use the same brush. I am careful with the water because I don't want it to look fake. And if you use too much blue or you don't add enough of the green, it can look kind of purple, the water. And I want it to look somewhat realistic. So we're going to try painting a little bit on here too. Bring a little bit of that blue here. And notice I don't worry too much about bringing it on all the water. Like I don't want to bring it up close to here because that is how the water looks when I'm shooting this. It doesn't have the blue right here because we're coming up to the surf and it's sand right below it. So I'm trying to make this gradual and natural looking as much as I possibly can. Now I know I'm getting it on their heads a little bit, but I can erase that. Right now I'm just doing general water here. Okay, then I'm going to use a bigger brush and we're going to erase this. It kind of affects my skyline there a little bit too much, so I want to make sure that doesn't go in there. Then if I need to see, I can come in here nice and close and oops, where were we? This one. No, this one. And we're just going to use the erase button, and we're going to erase that off of her hair and off of the side of his face as well, making sure that we don't get any on there. Okay, then I can play with it a little bit more. So I'm going to say it's a little bit too blue for me. So we're just going to reduce the blue slightly, take it down so that's a little bit more natural looking. Oh, except what? Oh, I think that's painted on another one. No wonder it's not doing something funny there. We're going to erase that. Sorry. Go back to this one. And then I'm going to erase it off of her hair. That's better. And off the side of his face. Then we can come in here and reduce the blue there until it's a little more subtle. Okay, that's good. All right, same here. Paint that on here. And again, I've got that more subtle blue that I was doing with the last one. I'm not going to worry too much about getting in the sky because I'm just going to erase that in a second. I just want to make sure I also don't get it in the waves there that I want to be a little bit more white. Okay, so we'll just use a bigger brush here and I'll erase it off the sky. And I'm still going to do sky work to this anyway, so if I get a little bit of blue on there, it's not going to be the end of the world because I am going to be painting more blue on that sky on the bottom there. Okay, and last but not least, here we go in this one. Make a little bit bigger brush here. Keep sliding up. There we go. Okay, and erase. As you can see, it's a little bit monotonous doing this, but it saves me a ton of time. I would so much rather use the adjustment brush in Adobe Camera Raw than to try to do this all in Photoshop with adjustments. It would take at least 2 or 3 times the amount of time. Okay, all right, now I want to work on the sky. So this is where I take a bit of freedom with colors. Depending on what's happening on the sky on that day. My main concern is that I really need all the detail to be in the sky. I don't like shooting beach sessions where I've got any part of the sky that is blown. So if I do have, and that's how I shoot my sessions, so that I don't have to do hardly any work in sky overlays or trading out skies. I sometimes have to do it, and I'm going to show you guys how to do it today, but generally I shoot so that I don't have to. I don't like doing extra work. I'm not particularly a huge fan of editing, so I want to get it over with as soon as I possibly can. So we're going to add some blue to the upper part of the sky, and then I'm going to paint on some pink clouds, I think, to match her dress a little bit. So you can see that that is too purpley, so we're going to, and maybe a little too much blue, so we're going to bring back our blue a little bit, bring back our green a little bit. And it's also gotten on my water here a little bit, but that's all right. I don't mind. It looks good there. And then I'm going to do the same thing for each one. This one, it's going to get on his head, so I'm going to have to erase that. With the skies, I like to make sure that they don't look fake. So yes, I am painting colors on here, but generally they are colors that actually exist in the sky when I'm shooting. I'm not making sunsets out of nothing or painting, you know, magical colors that don't actually exist in nature. I want this to look like a real photo. So we're going to take that blue off of any part of him that's been on there. Okay, that's good there. And then we'll keep going here. So this one, we've got this big expansive sky. So I'm going to paint on some pink, or not paint on, but see how I've got the pink in the clouds here. I'm going to bring that back in to make sure that I get that detail at the end here. Okay, you're taking forever to paint on. Come on, adjustment brush. There we go. All right, that's better. I'm also going to maybe add a little bit of warmth and colors down here in the bottom because it looks a little bit sad and blue. So we're going to erase that off of our subjects here. And it looks fine on the water. I left a little bit of leeway with the water as well so that I could do that. And then last but not least, we'll go to this one. And do the same thing. Big brush, painting on those colors. Use my eraser tool to take it off of my subject. You can be obviously super careful about making sure, but I tend to use soft brushes so that you can't notice that as much. Okay, then I want to have a little bit of color in some of these clouds. So to do that, let's paint a little bit of warmth and a little bit of magenta onto some of these clouds here. I'm going to use a smaller brush and just use sort of sweeping motion here on some of the clouds that already have a little bit of that color, but I'm just going to enhance it, bring in a little bit more interesting tones there. Okay, then I'm going to create a new one and I'm just going to test out what happens. Sometimes I like to paint warmth just and magenta just on the horizon to give it kind of a pink glow. I'm not sure it's going to work in this case because we've got full cloud here, but let's just try it. Sometimes it can look funny when you have just clouds, like why would they be that color kind of a thing, but we're going to paint it on and see what happens. So I'm going to reduce the warmth a little bit and make it just pink. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. We might leave a little bit on. I'm just going to use a big soft brush and erase part of it. Both here and here. Okay. So we've got kind of this purpley sort of color. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure if I love that, so I might take that one off. I'm just going to press the delete key to take it off, and then yeah, I like it better with the blue. We're going to keep it with blue. Okay, but here I've got the same pink that I was using. Actually, I'll go back to this one and make sure. It was this one here. I've got the same pink and warm tones that I'm going to be painting on clouds here. I can actually do it in this whole section up here because that's a little bit more sun there. And I might add a little bit more. I'm trying to kind of look at what she's wearing here and match it a little bit to that. I like to do that sometimes when moms are wearing sunset color dresses, which is what I recommend that they wear. Pastels, pinks, sand color, blues, all of that works great at the beach. So sort of blend them in and makes the your eye go right to your subject. Okay, that looks good. All right, next one. And this is where I've got quite a few of these pink clouds happening up here. And you remember they were kind of this color before. I'm just going to bring it out a little bit. Maybe a little bit smaller brush here, down here. All right, I feel like this is too pink, so I'm going to fix it a little bit, but I'm just going to paint on a little bit more. Okay, let's just take the magenta down a notch here and maybe add a little bit more warmth. Okay, that's nice there. Yeah, all right. Now here is, I do have a little bit kind of a green haze on the horizon there, probably from where I was painting on the warmth earlier. So I can either erase the warmth or I can just do a new adjustment brush, and we can try to, let's see what happens if we add more magenta to this. Going for that pink glow. Or I can just erase it off and make it really blue. But I think I might like the pink on this particular shot. Yeah, that's not terrible. I'm gonna increase the exposure a little bit there, make it a little bit brighter, add a little bit more warmth. Yeah, I don't mind that. So I just have to fix it up a little bit. So I'm gonna make it gradual going up here. And then we'll erase it off of our subjects and off of the water here. I'm just gonna use a big soft brush again because I want it to be not too terribly noticeable on there and kind of more gradual. And then I'm going to use a really soft brush and just erase up here so that it comes in a little bit there, but not a pink line. I don't want a line there. Okay, good. And finally, we're going to go back to this pink one here, that one, and paint that on up here. Again, you can see it kind of matches her dress. You guys can hear that funny sound. It's just I use a Wacom tablet for doing this. If you haven't tried one, you definitely should for photo editing. It's very quick, especially for things like this, masks or painting things on. So I'm going to go back up to this same pink glow I had here, and I'm going to paint it on this one as well. Smaller brush. Then we'll erase this. And a big brush up here. There. Okay, then what I do is I go through each image and I just make sure that I'm happy with the overall colors of the image. So for example, in this one, I would say actually after doing this, I think that they do need a little bit more warmth on them. So I'm just going to bring that up a little bit. Go away so I can see. And then if I want, I can do a new brush here. And I'm going to just maybe add a little bit of warmth just to the sand, not to the subject. If I add any more to them, they're going to be bright orange. And I don't want that. Oh, I don't want it brighter. I just want it warmer. And then I might keep the same warmth and just put it on the sand on some of these other photos as well. In here. Don't need a lot of it in this one, but we'll just do it. And again, with a big soft brush so that you can't see it too much. Yeah, we'll maybe do a tiny bit here as well. Not on everything, but okay. Now I've done all my changes. So all color changes and exposure changes are all done with these images, and I always do them in Adobe Camera Raw because now I can open up in Photoshop and all I have to do is beach cleanup and running my actions. So I'm going to show you guys how to run my action, how to create your own actions as well. So I just selected all the photos by going here, select all. Then I'm going to open them up into Photoshop. Okay guys, I've got everything open up into Photoshop now. What I'm going to start with here is to clean up the beach. So we live in WA where we have these ridiculously beautiful beaches, but every now and then I have sessions where seaweed will come in here and it will be really gross, in which case I want to make sure my clients are standing as close to the surf or in the surf as I possibly can, because I don't want to edit all that out. But I do often get these little tiny things here that I'm going to have to clean up. So I go through and do that in every single image first. Then I'm going to do the other things that I need to do to every single image. So for this particular type of session, I'm going to liquefy the mum. I always do liquefying of every mum to make them a little bit thinner. Not that she needs it. She's beautiful, this one, but I do it anyway. And I'm also going to get rid of under eye circles. So we've got, especially with parents of babies, they often have darker circles underneath their eyes, and like her little hair here, I'm going to get rid of that stuff. So anything that's a small, minute change happens in the beginning here, then I can go through afterwards once I'm happy with the image as a whole, and I can do my action on all of it. And then all I have to do is tweak each one a little tiny bit and save it in the edited folder. So I'm going to do it as quickly as I can. So I'll do this on its own layer so you can just see the difference right now. And to do that, I'm just going to hit Command J or Control J and add a new layer over here on this side. Then I'm going to go over here to my healing brush tool, and I'm going to show you another option you can do as well, but we'll just start with the healing brush because that's easy. Spot healing, by the way. And I'm going to clean up any little spots that I can find just by coming over them like this. You just have to be careful with this particular tool that you aren't using it too large. If you have a really big brush and you're trying to paint on, it's going to get confused and take other parts of the image and look really fake. So you need to make sure it's small, just bigger than the area that you're trying to fix, essentially. That was kind of a larger thing there, but we can do that. So as far as footprints go, I'm going to take out some of those footprints. It's okay to leave footprints from my clients there, or a few things. You don't want it to look like they haven't walked on the sand, but I don't like large, distracting footprints all over the front here because I feel like it takes away from the image as a whole. So here, I'm just going to take out things that actually look like feet. So we're going to leave some of the indentations in the sand here, but anything that is a foot here is going to go.